Welcome back to another episode of The Unpopular Opinion, Becoming Popular, where I discuss the I Ching hexagrams that are in transit that may be playing a large role in your life. And my name is Yana the Heretic, and we are yet again filtering another gate in the throat through the collective civilization. Gate 56. Gate 56 is the design of stimulation or the wanderer. This is where all of our storytelling comes from, all of our myths, beliefs, religions, spirituality. This is the throat gate that says, I believe. And to start out, I wanted to talk about the recent readings that I somehow instinctually or in sync with the times have been reading about. I've been reading The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist, and she references one of the times she went to Bangladesh in the late 1970s. And at that time, Bangladesh was the second poorest country. And what had happened to their land was they had mass floods coming through. The soil was just muck. And on top of that, they had a lot of poisonous shrubs that were overpopulating the land. So you couldn't even eat the berries. You couldn't even use them like blackberries or anything. And the people that had farms, they were getting, some aid from the government, and they had some other fundraising programs at that time where the government was giving them financial aid. But what happens with that situation and that cycle is that once you get help, you almost feel like this dire hopelessness because you're like, yeah, what's the point? I'm getting help from the government and everything is just too hard. You get into that mindset and it's easy to go there. But what ended up happening was the government didn't really support them well, right? They started not believing in society, and therefore they didn't give up as much farmland or acreage. They didn't see any results. Ultimately, what happened was there was a lot more crime because with whatever funds they did get, they were stealing from each other and pillaging, and it was very much a negative place to be. And at that time, Lynn's Hunger Project had come in, and it was one of her early projects, fundraising, and they came with this visionary workshop, and it was public, so everyone could come. They had about 130 million people in Bangladesh, which is actually really insane to think about at that time, in the late 1970s. And they started out with a bit of music, a bit of meditation, and they started, calming the anxiety, leveling it out. And basically, they got people into this state of this visionary process of like what would happen if you actually envisioned your country being, the country that would produce poetry and fine arts. You would be able to heal the land and work with the land and work with the nature to the point where you can actually develop fine goods and be able to trade them and be a valuable source in civilization. You would play a role of abundance, and it would be very specific to your culture. And what happened from there's people that were like instantly deeply moved and captivated by this. They never really had this like shake up. No one was really running on this type of belief system, right? So 7 men created the Chowti Project, which is the bold step for self-reliance. And 7 men basically got everyone hyped up and, asked for whatever resources, the poor people had left. And they raised about like $750, to basically use tools to cut down all these crazy bushes, right? And they started building roads. They started, getting other people interested. The government saw that, hey, like there's people making progress, 70% less crime, that's a lot less crime. And, people ended up making headway and finding a path to a lake, an unknown lake to them, where it was abundant with fish, and that is the real like highlight of belief. That is the real like high upside of this belief of civilization. You can create monuments, right? And this is relating to the archetype of Mot, which we discussed. And, I'm obviously fascinated by Egyptian culture. And that was, equally black and white aspect of the belief in civilization, because they had such strong beliefs that they erected these huge pyramids, these monuments, the Sphinx, things that thousands and thousands of years ago that were built are still here today. We're still talking about them, and these archetypes are still playing a role. Same with, Greek literature and, we talk about the Celtic and Nordic gods. There's so many archetypes out there that we can pick and choose from. African, the book Jambalaya really like is profound. The saints, the Key of Solomon, whatever it is, like these symbols or archetypes are playing a role today. And obviously, willpower in civilization creates something magnanimous and like really it's revolutionary to watch, right? It's just like, how do they create these like crazy, marches and parades where like people are, moving in sync, like it's literally measured ear to ear, and everyone's got their role. That's the collective civilization that we had. There's a lot less of that now because we are in the individual age. So we see these holes in the civilization because we're all moving through our own labyrinth now. It's not the same labyrinth. It doesn't look the same. It's not the same ladder or whatever, So we're really getting to carve ourselves as the archetype here, because we are capable of depicting our own stories, our own beliefs. This is the Gate 56 expressing from its own past. And this is the throat reaching again to the ajna. It's like, what are these patterns, these life lessons, this PTSD really creating as your belief and creating a story? And typically these people are like the best at telling the story. They tell it for attention. They tell it because it gives you chills, and like the Halloween story, you know, it's like something that really moves you and scares you for life. It can affect you in the other way where it inspires you for life, you know, it's something that changes your mind. And these people are great at changing your mind, or they're really just great at drawing attention to themselves. They may not always speak from their own authenticity, and that's just the 56 talking from regurgitated ideas and things they heard on the news, or something that they, you know, all of a sudden believed was true. Like all these ads for like what you should and shouldn't eat nowadays, like, oh, well, you find out every day that this is actually bad for you, and this new technology and this new pill here will clear out your lymphatic system. Or, you know, you hear so much of this now, and it can get very complex. So it's really back, just leveling this back to your strategy and authority, and really either trying it out, seeing if it's true, or just waiting for the right audience, waiting for, you know, the right thing that captivates you to actually change you. Because that's what a wanderer is, right? It's weaving in and out of the story. And the molds change. The story doesn't really hold value anymore. And, you know, that's really what we're seeing is like, you know, this is the gate on the cross of laws, and these laws they're not fitting our time anymore. This is why 2027 is highly regarded, and we talk about it a lot in human design, because this is really the pinnacle of change, or change that hasn't happened since 1781. You know, we got a ton of retrogrades. We got a ton of things that, you know, astrologers are saying that many of us haven't actually lived through. You know, these are like, you know, times that could potentially be nuclear, or could potentially actually change what used to happen for us in history. And that takes time to really gather. And gate 11 helps us, which is the harmonic to this gate. It's the gate of ideas, and the theme is peace. So this is where the ajna really starts to collect things and create a belief. It's got this, you know, the ajna is always strategic, and it's pattern recognition. Like I was saying, you know, gate 62 last week was more factual, and its harmonic was 47. But this is more so, you know, you're gathering beliefs in gate 11. You're trying to create this not matter-of-fact way, but more so from experience and from creativity, you know, from the abstract realm. You're gathering these systems of belief, and the 56 really helps express them, whereas the 11 is just sitting and waiting, and they're not always capable of expressing that without gate 56. So together, they really create the channel of curiosity and a design of a seeker, which is the one that is, you know, happy to weave in and out of stories and beliefs. Because a seeker knows, in general, the journey is never ending. They're always discovering new things about themselves, or about civilization, or about the collective. And this is the way that collective language affects us throughout time. Because spirituality and religion was the first things we had. We had orators, you know, and they created these very digestible ways as messengers to help us understand the gravity of history. And you'd never see like a witch doctor or something like head into their tribe and like pull up their glasses and just be like, actually, this right here says blah 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 about medicine. It's not how the wits of our society and culture started. We started with drumming and chanting and experiencing the harsh reality of nature and earth, and also being able to work with it and finding that way to work with it. So ultimately, what is the story of your life, and is it important for you to depict, or are you regurgitating other people's thoughts and ideas and stories right now? And how do people around you take it in? Are they like, no thanks, dude, like, you're a conspiracy theorist, I don't really care what you have to say? Or are they like extremely gullible? Or are they like actually individually taking it in and being like, I like this little bit, but everything else can fall away? Or you really inspired me, dude. Like, we even see the weather differently because we're like, oh, blame it on Poseidon or Zeus, so we're having hail and like crazy water, and floods. Or there's a ton of us that still respect the archetypes. And if anything about the snake year and what we're experiencing now is about building yourself as an archetype, because ideally and realistically, you're going through these things potentially alone, or it feels like it's alone. Maybe it's environmental because we're in our own house, in our own computer, in our own screen. We see more and more of that. Or is it because you feel like an outsider and you're like, yeah, like maybe I float in this group, maybe I float in that group, and I don't feel like I've really found somebody that is like my twin or whatnot, or somebody that thinks exactly like I do. There's beauty in that, because it's not so strict. It's not so much blind obedience. You're not going to get burned at the stake or stoned or hanged or anything. No one's going to see that as enjoyment anymore. We really respect people's individual thoughts and what they individually gathered through their own life experience. And belief is always moving like the soul of water, and abundance is always moving onward. So you're going to be affected by things that you move forward, things that move through you and onward. Questions of the week, friends, foes, fays. What beliefs have you been scolded for? Have you been an insider or an outsider most of your life? Have you been even an outsider of outsiders? It really depends on, your design, right? There's always going to be people that are tribal, people that are collective, people that are individual. So, it all holds its place. It's all the balance. What beliefs did you hold dear that have shifted for you in a positive way? Was it clear and simple to shift? Or did it feel like the dark night of the soul for a while? Or even does it feel like that now? And what is your story? Where are you at in it? And how can you stay resilient in it? What fuels your personal resilience? How do you get up every day, keep going, even though you feel rejected or unseen, when carving your own path seems too hard? That's a hard question, because I know that there's tons of people stimulating us today, with their own beliefs, and it can get extremely chaotic. It can get a little too much about health, a little too much about spirituality, a little bit too much about technology, a little bit too much about politics, like, where do you fit in it, and it's really nice to be able to cut some of these, sources off, so you could really find your own reason to wake up instead of just being fed by other things. This is really important. If your story was an art piece, what kind would it be? Would it be an opera, a play, a dance, a cartoon, a claymation, a historical document, or a kind of chalice or vessel or vase? Would you like to leave this story, this playwright, this object with someone or with the civilization? Have courage to stand up to the no's in your life, the people that say no. Don't let it tear your vision down. Maybe you'd like to find aid in community. As little as there may seem to be, there's always community and gatherings, and sometimes you don't have to believe in this whole mass belief, but sometimes it can shift you a little bit, and inspire you a little bit or affect you a little bit. Yeah. Don't forget that you're an archetype, and you can fashion yourself to that. The visionary process is real, and the more that you get time to believe in it is what will become of you. You see tons of druids and fairies and people in this world, steampunks or whomever. It helps. It surely helps get you out of a funk. But, we're breaking it down to the fractal. I hope you enjoy your journey, and I will see you next week.